There's nothing wrong with being spontaneous here and there and giving them a little surprise, but really be able to give the audience what they expect so that they can continue to find that happiness in your show or in your business because you're giving them what they are looking for.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, my friends? I am recording this quick disclaimer, not in my studio, and it's around the holidays. The kids are playing in the background. They're out of school. And I wanted to just let you know that episodes 132, 134, 136, 138, 140, and 142 are all going to be interview episodes. Instead of recording solo episodes around the holidays, I'm going to go ahead and keep giving you 4 episodes a week for now. But I'm going to have some of the previous recorded episodes that have never aired quite yet play through for episodes 132 to 142. So anyway, I hope you're having a great holiday if you're listening to this around the holidays. And I would say spend some time with your family. But if you ever are going to do something like what I'm doing now, just let your audience know. Just let your listener know. Now let's jump into an interview episode. Thanks.
And we're back with another episode of Podcast on Podcasting. Today, we're going to get into a few things. Our guest today has had a podcast for a little over a year. It's been growing and it works as part of her business. It works to attract her ideal client, the type of person that she works with, and funnels them into what she's doing. She's also got a lot of really cool pieces of her bio. So I'll probably ask a few different questions. Instead of reading the bio, I might just hit and highlight the parts that I thought were interesting and ask questions. And we'll get started right here. Her company is the Go Confidently service. And her podcast is called Casa DeConfidence Podcast. House of Confidence. Is that right? Or did I mess that up?
No, you got it 100% right. Thank you so much for getting it right and for having me on your show, Adam.
Good. I lived in LA for a little while and I visited Mexico just one time. So I know a tiny bit of Spanish.
That's all we need.
Not enough. So April of 2020, you started your own podcast, Julie, and you call it House of Confidence or Casa DeConfidence. I'm curious because like with me, a lot of the things that I will do and help people with are things that I found a way to overcome. I don't know why, but it's never the things that came naturally to me. Just personally, if something came naturally to me, it's boring. I don't want to teach it. I don't want to help other people. I don't want to start a podcast on it. But it's those things that I had to struggle with and find my way that make me say, man, now that I've found it, I should teach it for others. So did you ever struggle with confidence yourself?
To say that I didn't struggle with confidence at one point would be a lie. I think that everyone struggles with confidence. And this is something that we're not innately born with, but we have to really learn the behavior of feeling motivated to do more of the things that make us better, learning new skills. And when we learn new skills, then we become confident. And yes, there are areas in my life that I know I'm in my jam. I know I'm doing it right. And I feel really good about it. But yet there are others that I'm still a work in progress.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And one other thing, like in your bio, it talks about your best-selling book. It's called Confident You. And I was wondering, just because I think our listener who's a podcaster is probably thinking, what can I do to really grow what I'm doing? And I always talk about this threefold system of the 3 pillars of influence. You've got to be pretty active on social media. I'm not sure if you're active on social media, Julie.
Yes, I am.
Okay. You also should if possible, meet in person. And to me, that even includes like Zoom, because a lot of times when you can connect with somebody face to face, it allows them to be able to know you, like you, and trust you. More likely that they'll actually do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you do that follows that part of the path? Like before a client decides to hire you, do you ever meet with them either in person or at a storefront or on like a Zoom call or something like that?
Absolutely. Your formula, it is my formula, honestly. I think that the like, know, and trust factor, and this is something that I really work with my clients, is making sure that they understand that people are not going to do business with people they don't trust, people they don't see that they have value to add. And obviously that you like. We want to make sure that we surround ourselves with the people that we like spending time with. A coaching relationship or hiring a consultant means that they're going to come into your space. You're going to be vulnerable and open. So it's very important to build that like, know, and trust factor. So I do hang out on social media. I have a very intentional media plan, not only for my business, but for the podcast. And also when someone reaches out to me, I want to meet them in person. I want to make sure that they get to know me. They get to know my personality, because although I'm very intentional with what my brand is on social and what I put out there, I want them to see that what they see on social is what they get. And that's who I am. And I do make sure that strategy. And that's one of the things that has made me be successful in a year of launching a business. Typically, most businesses don't find a lot of success in the first year. They struggle. And by all means, I have struggled. But really being able to be present, speaking to people, getting to know them, allowing them to hear me has been one of my strategies to be able to grow.
I'm really glad you went through that. And then the third piece of the 3 pillars, the third pillar, like if it's a stool, for example, you will fall if you only have 2 of them. So you need all 3, is your thought leadership platform. And that could be a book, that could be a podcast, that could be a YouTube channel, a Facebook community. And I know you've got your podcast that's a little over a year old. It's growing, but you also brought this book out. And I think a lot of us listening are thinking that maybe we have always wanted to write a book, or we know the power of having a book. And I wanted to find out if you could help us out with the secret sauce of what you might have done to get a book as a bestseller, if you don't mind.
So I love that you use analogies to create examples. The teacher in me really appreciates that. And I love the 3-legged stool. Yes, having authority and having a book and having a Facebook group, which I have, and a podcast is part of my strategy to create that authority and knowledge base. For me, having the book, it was something I always talked about doing. I actually, in another period of my life, I actually did write the book, but that's not the book that I published. I wrote this book, personal memoir on my grandparents. And as I started to go through, I didn't set out to write the book. I was doing the podcast, I was doing the Facebook group, and someone came to me and said, "Oh, you should publish a book." And I thought, "Oh, sure, I'll do that." And when I started to speak to this person about the book that I had written, he said, "That's not your book. You need to write a book about what you do, the transformation that you help people." And I thought, "Oh, okay, well, let me really first figure it out," right? And I think that this is a lot of people want to write a book, but they don't know what they want to write about. And then they spend a lot of time going through and trying to figure that out. And the first strategy before I could actually launch it and make it a bestseller was really understanding who did I want to speak to and who did I want to share my message and secret sauce of sorts with. So I really spent a lot of time listening to potential clients and people who were not my potential clients so that I understood what their pain points were, and really getting through your message and really sifting through what you want to share and what value you bring to others. And that's really the first goal too. It's great to have bestseller after your name, but it's better when you know that you're making an impact in people's lives and bringing value to them. It's so important. So I started to really gather my content and really doing those book interviews and talking to people. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I want you to finish.
All right.
I want you to finish.
From the book interviews, what I started to do is I started to create a community. That community is really the backbone of what allowed me to continue to move forward. I made my community a part of the process in the book. I didn't know what I was going to call it. I had an idea. I wanted an amazing you. I went through the peaceful, powerful you, different things. And as I continued to build this community of people and interviewing individuals who were my ideal clients and figuring out really niching down to who my ideal client was, I began to ask, well, what resonates? And finally, I even know her name, and I'm going to mention her name because she won't mind. Her name is Jean Banning. She said, your brand is confidence. Your business is called Go Confidently. Why wouldn't you write Confident You? And I thought, oh, wow, and then of course I went back and I tested that with my audience. I said, here are 3 titles, narrowed down from however many. And they loved it. They love Confident You by far of anything else that I had thought of. And then the next step is we had to create a cover and really involving my audience and involving my community in the process really helped me to continue to move forward in writing this book. The biggest thing too is that people love what they help to build, and really being able to surround yourself with the people you are trying to serve and understanding what their needs are, what their pain points are, really. And then if you have the value and the content and the knowledge to help them, then that's what goes in your book. That's what goes in your content. And people keep coming back to you. I started writing and the process was going through, again, making it exciting, having them know that, hey, we are launching, we are coming out, this is the day. And really, I worked with an organization, I worked with a book writing coach, I worked with a small publishing firm. He's been helping authors and helping individual coaches, consultants really do what I did. And he really guided me through the process, but he has been very instrumental in my life. And again, he has a framework and the framework works. So I just followed it. You have to, and this is the same thing I do for my audience and my clients. I have a formula. I give you the formula. I challenge you. Do I do everything by the letter, what my coach gives me? Not really, but I do follow recipe for a chocolate cake of sorts, right? And if you follow it, then they can find the success. When I launched the podcast and when I launched the book, I really wanted to make sure that I was consistent with my branding, that I was consistent with the messaging, but also making sure that I was bringing value to people and sharing the stories. The other part is that the book is really filled with anecdotes, not only of influential people in my life who have been an example in building my confidence, in helping me go out confidently and create simple habits that help me. But now the people that I've interviewed and I'm working with who have become my clients, they're part of my book. They're people who I'm sharing their stories. So of course people want to hear it be featured, right? Who doesn't want to be heard or talked about? Because most of us have that what's in it for me, that WIFM that we talk about in business. So having all of those components has helped me build that brand. And the day that we launched the book, the day that we really came together was a day that I had, again, created an email list, made sure that people were involved, made sure that people understood. I created collateral and communicated with my audience and let them know that this was important, because not only was it important to me to launch the book, but they were going to have a part in helping others build confidence and grow. And all of us came together for that.
Several short questions for you here. One of them was that you said you created an email list, like when you were launching your book. How do you create an email list? Like someone wants to launch a book and they just make up an email list, or where do they buy an email list? Or is it people that you already had their emails, but you didn't have a list yet? How does that work?
Okay. So the first thing that I did is I did something that took a lot of confidence. And actually, I don't think I was very confident in doing it, but I took the step anyway, is I needed to tell people that I was writing a book. So you can actually go into Facebook, and I'm sure you can, if you look at my profile, it's my personal page, it's open to people. You will see the video from last October, I believe, in which I made a declaration. I'm writing a book. I had spoken to someone that wanted to help me publish it, but I needed to put the word out there. You needed to pick something, promote it, and then hopefully profit. And we can talk a little bit more about the profit part, but I picked, not only had I been doing a podcast, and I had a few people on my email list from that, but the next step was really getting out into the universe and saying, I'm writing a book. This is what I'm doing. It's a big thing. And you would be surprised. I had people that I had not heard from in hundreds of years reply to me and say, this is amazing. And then I asked for help, and I created that opportunity for people to join in the excitement. And I said, I am looking to interview people. And it could be that you're not necessarily my target audience, but I would love to talk to you. And I began to ask people, who do you know that can help me? Who do you know that you think may be that confident person or lacking confidence? And you don't want to ask someone who's not confident. And again, I didn't have a name for the book at that point. All I knew is that I was writing it. So starting to build an email list came from asking for the interviews. And as people started, and my email list is quite large now, but that happened from me just asking the question, who do you know, and can I interview you for my book? And that helped me to build the audience, create the email list. And then I started to create content that was meaningful, and I started to bring them into my universe. We undervalue the power of email lists at times. One of your pillars and legs of your stool is that social media. However, people forget that we don't have access to people if social media goes away. So it's very important to nurture the relationships and begin to bring them into your own universe and create the types of things that they want to listen. So after someone met with me in an interview, I would ask them, would you like to be added to my email list? And even when they signed up for the interviews, they were being asked, can we add you to the email list? And then consistently building emails and opt-ins and different things that people would want.
Let me cut you off right there because I had another question. It was about, you mentioned that you really wanted to be consistent. And I didn't know if you felt like consistency was a part of your being, something that your dad told you had to do, or if consistency mattered toward what you were building. So could you share with us why you thought it was so important to be consistent with your book and your podcast?
Consistency in my career was something that allowed me to grow. When I wanted to translate this to your own business, and I think that this is where people go wrong. Many beginning entrepreneurs or podcasters don't stay the course. You end up running in 100 million different directions. And you think, oh, this is not working. And then you move on to the next thing. You really have to be able to spend time and go back to that consistency and know that that compounding effect is going to hit the mark. You need to really create the consistent, again, habits. And for me, productivity is really big. I have always used a block scheduling, an ideal calendar to really map out what my days look like. And as an entrepreneur, I found that I wasn't doing that in the very beginning. So it's very difficult to get traction in your business or in a podcast if you're not releasing on the same day, if you're not keeping the same content, because people like what they hear. They like to have the same and be predictable when you're giving them something different. And there's nothing wrong with being spontaneous here and there and giving them a little surprise, but really be able to give the audience what they expect so that they can continue to find that happiness in your show or in your business because you're giving them what they are looking for and you're not throwing them a left curve. And that consistency was very key. When I started to implement the same things that I did in business, when I was a senior executive, I had to really be able to allocate time for sales. I really had to be able to allocate time for the things that only I can do and then start to delegate some of the other things and consistently show up, whether it be in social, whether it be in my email marketing, or whether it be in the podcast and the interviews that I was doing.
Julie, thanks for going into that. I couldn't agree more. I just think that consistency is critical. I think that when we're consistent, it does so much that you hit it right on the head. Compounds. It compounds. For example, like as we're consistent and we show up over time a lot, it shows our listener or our reader or our social media person, whatever, it lets them know that we're authentic, We keep coming. We don't quit. We're going to do it no matter what, even if we're on vacation. All of those things help somebody be able to trust you a lot more. So that consistency is so important on many, many, many levels. And if this episode was just on consistency, I think we could spend a couple of hours on this one topic.
For sure. For sure. I have to go back to the example. It's funny we're talking about this. I opened my email on Tuesday, and the first email that I saw was from Marie Forleo. I have followed her forever. I get her emails every Tuesday. And I thought that's exactly the thought that I had. Oh, there's Marie's email. And that's what you want your clients and your listeners to have. Like, oh, there's Adam's podcast. You know what you're going to get. You know what to expect. And there's comfort in that.
And another thing, Julie, that you were mentioning when you were talking about your book and everything and your podcast is getting clients part of the book. It's getting your audience feeling like they are part of the book. And I hope that the listener didn't gloss over that, because those points were so helpful. If we're wanting to launch a top podcast, if we're wanting to get actual traction with what we're doing, Julie started interviewing some people and getting them to be part of this. And now they're part of the growth. They're part of the beginning, and they get to know Julie. They're more likely to share it. They're more likely to tell other people about the show. They're more likely to tell people about their episode or about the chapter that they were written in the book. Oh, you got to buy the book and listen to chapter. I listen to books, by the way, because I'm dyslexic. But read chapter 13 or listen to chapter 13. You're going to love it. I really appreciated that you mentioned that, because I think that it's a piece that most people miss, and quite probable why most people fail. So love that. If you're listening, by the way, and you want to have a best-selling book, I just started working with a company that came through some connections that I had. I'll make sure that link is in the show notes. So I think it's important. If you're going to have a podcast, you need a great podcast. That's why you work with us. If you want to have a book, you need that book to be a bestseller. You need it to get in front of people. You need to show that credibility. It's critically important. Julie, you mentioned in your bio that you love to travel. Where's the last place you traveled?
Well, my last place that I traveled was Georgia, believe it or not. And I did take a few trips during pandemic, very reluctantly, but I had not seen my mom in a while. So I went to Georgia about a week and a half ago. But the last big trip really that I had was probably Seattle before pandemic. And
what makes travel exciting for you or fun for you, or what do you get out of going new places?
Okay. I have been to over 40 countries and 40 states, I think, in different cities throughout the states. For me, it's meeting the people. I am a people person. That's probably why I have a podcast too, because I love talking to people, learning about what they love and what they do. I think from an early age, I've always been a reader, and I would read about like different countries and see that. But being in these places, there's no other feeling that I get from anything else. The first time I went to the Louvre, for instance, and I arrived in Paris, I've seen it in pictures, you see it in movies, and then all of a sudden, here you are. And I don't care what people say. People in Paris have always been very kind to me. But everywhere I've been, there is a certain cultural difference, but then we're all the same at the same time, right? We all care, we all love, we all feel, and travel allows you to connect with people that are different from you, but then the same. And I love that part of travel. Also, my goal is to see everything that I can while I'm in this earth. So I have a few trips that are planned already coming up.
I love that. I can't believe you've been to 40 different countries. I've been to one other country, just Mexico. And long story short, I didn't have a passport because I was born on a polygamous colony when I was very, very young. I guess you're born when you're 0. So I was born on a polygamous colony, though, and it made it so I didn't get a passport until 2019. But I hope to catch up to you one day. So,
well, if you want to take a trip anytime.
Love it. Love it. So you also mentioned in your bio about philanthropy, and sometimes that is a tough word to say, but I think I said it just fine this time. United Way, Hands of Hartford, why is it so important for us to give back?
I was raised to believe that to those much given, much is expected. So from a very early age, I was taught the value of giving back. And one of the things that I did in moving to Connecticut, and even when I lived in New York, is really finding the organizations that give to those who resonate with me, right? The United Way specifically is one of the organizations that I give back to because my mom was someone who was employed. My mom had a master's, has a couple degrees, studied at Georgetown University, but growing up, my mom was a single mom that really had to make tough choices. Does she pay for insurance or does she pay for our phone bill? And the United Way has several programming that is helping what we call ALICE families, which are asset limited income constraint. And they're teaching financial literacy skills that help them be able to be better managers of their money and make the difference. And it's also doing a lot of impact in education, which is really important to my heart.
So I noticed that you mentioned meditation, you mentioned mindfulness, you mentioned some of these things. For one, I hate saying it out loud because you're not supposed to admit these things. You're supposed to pretend the opposite so that you just can trick your mind. But I'll just say I suck at meditation. I absolutely am terrible at it. And I don't know what everybody gets out of it. But the people, I guess I know that people get a lot out of it. Mm-hmm. I just never have felt the feeling. I don't know how to feel the feeling. If we have a listener that is inspired by meditation, or they have a couple of friends who feel completely enlightened because they spend that time to clear their mind, what would you have to say to someone like me?
Okay, I love this question, and I love that you said that. I felt the same way before when someone's like, you should meditate. I rolled my eyes and thought, oh yeah, sure, whatever, that's not for me. And the first time I tried it, I sucked at it. I was terrible. And I thought, who clears their mind? And we're not supposed to. That's the whole point of meditation. Our brain has over 60,000 thoughts a day, and it's like a waterfall. We can't just put a spigot in a waterfall and turn off the water. The waterfall is going to keep going. Meditation is about just being aware. Like, oh, here comes that thought. Oh, this is what I'm thinking. If you sit for a minute and begin for 30 seconds and say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on what it feels like to breathe. That's what mindfulness is. Feeling what the air feels like going into your nose and feeling into your body and then letting the air out. That's meditation. And a lot of people think that it's like that monk thing, that it's in Zen, but that's not really what it is. So I challenge you and I challenge others to be okay and say, hey, I sat for 30 seconds and I was just aware of what I was thinking. That's really what the meditation is about.
I recently traveled to Utah, where I'm from, and visited my family. And this guy comes over. He went to high school with me, but we didn't really connect until I was speaking at a conference. And he was at the conference and he was like, oh my gosh, it's you. And so I started being friends with this guy. And my mom has been going through a lot of transformation, I would say, over the last 4 years. And she's deep into it. And apparently this guy is as well. He's about my age. I just turned 40. Happy birthday to me. But when I was there, I sat down with each of them, Mike and my mother, and we were talking about yoga. And they said to me that yoga isn't a bunch of poses. And it wasn't even really that much about the pose. And some people strive to be good at just one pose their whole life or something like this. So where are you with yoga? Because I saw that in your bio that you're interested in yoga, and I couldn't help but ask, are you on the side of Mike and my mother, or is it more of just doing a couple of exercises, doing a couple of poses, getting some muscles going? I'm very curious.
I started my yoga journey also hating yoga. I thought it was dumb. I could never do it. It was too hard. And now I'm a certified yoga teacher. And the reason that I got my certification is because I started to realize that it's not about the perfection of the pose, but it's about the practice of the pose. And this is one thing that for most of us who are very A personality, type A, they're very competitive and want to be perfectionists, we want to do it just right. And that's the issue. Yoga is not about doing it just right, because how I do a pose is not the same way that you do a pose. And yoga is about understanding. You do need to know some of the mechanics, and obviously, so you don't get hurt. But if you start to just practice, like, what does it feel like maybe to raise your hand and breathe deeply? For many years in practicing yoga, I was always going for that perfection. And when I realized that it was not about trying to copy the teacher or the person next to me in the yoga class, it was about my own journey. And what does it mean when this person is saying, reach for your toes, and maybe my toes are farther away than somebody else and I'm not as flexible? It was about watching and seeing myself grow. And this applies to business too. And going back to that consistency, the more that you show up, the easier it becomes. But you have to be willing to be consistent, and you have to be willing to be okay with not being perfect.
It reminds me of me. The listener doesn't know this, but as you were talking about needs to be perfect, very competitive, I was pointing at myself.
Too.
It reminds me of me, and I think it's probably going to really resonate with anyone listening, because for a lot of us, we want to be so perfect and we feel bad if we're not. And sometimes it's just better to be ourselves and be on our own journey. And like with you launching your new podcast, and with the listener launching their new podcast, and this podcast is relatively new one as we're recording as well. It's not about being completely perfect. It's not about doing what I saw somebody else do. It's about knowing my own journey, being myself, and letting people resonate with who I am so I can help them get to the next level on their show. So I'm glad I asked the question because I loved your answer. I wanted to also ask you about, there's a piece of your bio that talks about you helping ambitious women, and specifically with helping people stop chasing shiny objects and helping them kind of achieve their goals. And I remember within the real estate industry, I was a real estate investor, or technically I still am a real estate investor. I just used to do it full time. And with real estate, I always think about like, okay, I can make money in this type of asset class. I can make money in this type of asset class. I'll do fix and flipping for a minute, and I realize how hard it is, and I stop, and then I go and do assisted living, and I realize how hard it is and how many hoops you need to jump through, and how many like government laws are holding you back on the, okay, I'm done with that. So I go to the next one. And it took me years to be successful in real estate for many reasons, because I never really focused on one thing. And so I love that you said this. Why is it important to you to focus? Why do you help women who are feeling overwhelmed make sure that they can put on those horse blinders? What are your thoughts on it?
One of the biggest things that I see with entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter where they are in their journey, it takes a lot of discipline to be able to stay in your lane. And anytime that we don't stay in our lane, and anytime that we are comparing and despairing, what is happening is that we're not making traction and we're not moving forward. I did a triathlon about 4 years ago, and by no means, I guess I am a triathlete, but I am not like one of those ultra marathoners. I was not a strong swimmer. I learned to swim from my dad, so I was very relaxed. Here's the thing. When I jumped in the pool, I realized that if I was distracted by the people cheering, or if I was distracted by the people swimming faster than I wasn't moving in the direction that I needed to go to finish. And that happens in business. If we're starting to say, oh, that guy has the same company, or this lady has this awesome offering, and that's what I do, then you're taking away time from really increasing and being, I'm going to say it, Adam, you may not like it, being mindful and in the moment of what does it feel like to go through the motions of what you're doing. And the more that you practice those things, like showing up consistently in your business, if you have an email campaign, if you're launching something, stay with it. Who cares who launches and who cares what's doing what? Stay in the process and don't focus on something else outside of your zone. Because even though someone may have something similar, it's not what you offer, and what you offer is just what somebody else needs.
Julie, I appreciate you jumping on the show and pouring your heart out and letting me just do something a little bit different, going through your bio and just asking questions on some things that I'm personally interested in, and absolutely hope that it helped the listener. Everything seemed to tie into podcasting. So I'm going to let you go. You've spent so much time with us. You've given us tons of value. The link to your podcast is already in the show notes. The link to your website is already in the show notes. Is there anything else that you want to share with the listener of maybe how they can reach you or get a hold of you?
Sure. I mean, I am Julie DeLucca-Collins and all of the socials. Feel free to reach out. I am happy. I'm also in Clubhouse, which is one of our favorite platforms. So you can find me there. I am definitely popping in a lot of different rooms. I do a room every Thursday on the power of sales, and we role play how to sell. So if that's something that you're intimidated about, feel free to jump in 8:00 Eastern time.
Done and done. And make sure that you go forward with confidence, everybody, as you're listening to this and you really want to grow your show, grow your podcast, grow your influence, grow your income. Do it with confidence. I hope you got a lot out of this episode. I'm personally going to try to work on meditation more. Loved everything that you shared. I'm going to let you go, and that's a wrap. This episode's brought to you by growyourshow.com. Grow Your Show lets you be the star of your show while we handle all the hard stuff. We offer reliable and affordable post-production services that allow you to grow your show organically without all the work. So go ahead and check out the website right now, and feel free to schedule a call with me, and let's take your show to the next level. Again, growyourshow.com. You just press record. We handle the rest.